In this segment of The Art of Thinking, we will discuss worldview and how it functions in the way we think. The mind thinks in two broad ways, theoretically and practically. When we reason theoretically, the principle from which our thinking begins is that two halves of a contradiction cannot both be true at the same time. For example, it cannot be the case that it is Monday here in Jacksonville and not Monday at the same time. When the mind thinks in a practical way, the reason it proceeds from is that good should be done and evil avoided. Now let's take a moment to discuss what we mean by good and evil. Evil has been a difficult, thorny issue for a very, very long time. We should understand that the majority of our Western civilizational history is Christian, and therefore the majority of Western thinkers have been Christian. And they have wrestled with this question of what is evil because in Christian theology, everything God has made is good. So how then do we explain evil? And the general answer is evil does not exist as a thing in itself, but it exists only insofar as there is a good that it is corrupting. And so evils fall into two classes, natural and moral. The difference is that natural evils do not lie under human will, and moral evils do. So blindness is a natural evil. It is the corruption of the good of sight in the eye. Lying is a moral evil lying under human will, and it is the evil of the corruption of the good of truth in speech. Now, with that understanding, we come to this idea of worldview. Everybody has basic fundamental beliefs that they reason from, but generally not to. And we see the world and interpret the world around us according to the beliefs of our worldview. Let's take two examples of worldview, and they're examples of worldviews that we find in our society all over. One we'll call traditional, and the other we'll call modern. Now, I wouldn't say that everybody we would call modern believes these things, but in general, this is what it would be. Let's take the traditional worldview first. You would believe, first of all, that there is a God who created the universe. Because you would believe that the universe has a beginning. Because the universe has a beginning, and it was created on purpose by God, then we conclude that there is inherent meaning in existence and in our own lives. And that meaning would be the reason for which God made something. Because there is inherent meaning, morality is discovered. And finally, in this kind of traditional worldview, people would believe, because there's a God who created everything, that we can learn from revelation from God. In a modern worldview, people would believe there is no God. And because there is no God, the material universe has always existed. Because there is no God and the material universe has always existed, all is random. There is no inherent meaning in anything. And thus, such meaning as we might have in our lives is the meaning we are able to invest it with. Because there is no inherent meaning in anything, morality is invented. And of course, because there is no God, there is no revelation. Now, we can imagine how two people, one of a traditional worldview and one of a modern worldview, would have a hard time agreeing on very much in terms of politics and cultural order. But if the people of these different worldviews are at least committed to speaking with each other and to hearing each other out, it's possible for them to come to agreements in which they can live together in peace and order and freedom. This is why it's important to understand worldview. You see, we sometimes encounter facts or arguments that we are inclined to reject. Oftentimes we're inclined to reject them because they conflict with our worldview. And not because there's anything wrong with them. This is usually because our worldview is being challenged and it doesn't feel good. But one important benefit that comes from clear and skillful thinking is that we can reflect on our most intimate beliefs and consider how worthy of belief they actually are. We will keep this in mind as we proceed through the rest of the course. In the next segment, we will consider the classical principles of thought.